And you'll give me an action or
action.
This is Darius Wallace and you are listening to Vroom, Vroom, Veer with Jeff Smith, reminding you to, one, stay inspired, and two, to look me up on my website. That's www.dariuswallace.com. And you can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and check out my TED Talks.
I love it. Well done. All right, let me hit stop. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Linn Rivers, thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going super. Thanks for having me.
So you are at linnrivers.com. So talk a little bit about what you're most excited about in your business today.
Yeah. And to clarify, that's LINN rivers.com
right.
for people listening.
Right.
And what am I excited about? I am excited about the course that I'm creating. I am deep in it and I have about 2 weeks to finish it. And I'm creating a course for people to overcome chronic health conditions and mental health disorders by understanding the root cause of literally the majority of illness. And I'm super excited about it because I have a pre-launch right now where people can get it for $50. And
Wow.
So many people have signed up for it because of the pre-launch price. And so I'm really having to push through right now and get it done for all of these people. And so I'm like, think about it. I'm like, yeah, let's do this.
It's neat how people show up for a deal, huh?
I made it $50 so no one had an excuse, right? Because it's like,
take away all obstacles.
Charge of your health.
Yeah.
And I'm giving you no excuse. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, good for you. That was probably one of the big turning points in my health journey. Like really? What you're talking about is like, I don't know. There was this sort of like fallacy in my brain, like my body is a car and I can take it to the doctor. It's like an auto shop and it's their job to keep me healthy, right? No, no, right. It's not. It's not.
Absolutely not.
And if you try that, it's not going to work out for you.
Chances are you're going to end up back there time and time again.
Well, yeah, we'll get into it. We'll talk about health journeys, so I don't want to get too deep into me. So let's go back in time and talk about Linn Rivers, and that's Linn Rivers again.
Good job.
Just to make sure. Okay, so where did you grow up, Linn?
So I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and New Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, not a very exciting place to grow up, either locations.
No, I actually visited both places. So I've been to a couple places, not many in New Mexico. I did go to El Paso once. El Paso, come on. You're right on the border. If you want to go to Mexico, it's right there. That's what I'll say. It's creeping over, as they say.
It is.
So what was it like for you growing up in El Paso / New Mexico?
Well, El Paso, I left El Paso when I was about 8 years old.
Okay.
And growing up there, I think a lot of people get things backwards, but I was actually the only white kid in my school.
Okay.
And so,
yeah.
I grew up in this environment where I had a lot of different cultures around me, but I was seen as the outsider, and so I had that adventure where people end up learning about that a lot later in life. I had that very early on.
Right.
And that was fine. Like I got by. I did what I had to do. I was a kid. I didn't pay attention to much things other than sports.
Okay.
And then New Mexico, New Mexico is definitely a beautiful place.
Oh, yeah.
It definitely has heart.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the town that I grew up in, it was like it was like a complete desert, nothing around. The coolest thing in the town was Target. And yeah, there wasn't anything to do there.
So what are your parents doing that you're growing up in El Paso / New Mexico in the middle of nowhere? That yeah.
They were, so my dad, he worked at Intel. So that's the reason we went to Rio Rancho, because that's, Intel came into that town. And so that's where we ended up going. And in El Paso, I mean, that's just where they grew up. So they stayed there until my dad had something better.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So dad
Nothing too
born and
exciting.
raised in El Paso. Okay.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, my buddy actually worked in Albuquerque at Intel. So that was like, I went to visit him in Albuquerque, and then we drove to Santa Fe. That was my first exposure to
Santa Fe is great.
red or green.
Exactly. Yes. The best thing about New Mexico.
You have to go just so you can say, I'd like
Exactly.
I'd
Not
like
telling you
both
anything
places.
about it.
That's right. I'd like both.
Oh, I
places.
do half and half.
Yes,
I
yes.
ask for
Christmas.
That's what it is. You go in, you ask for Christmas.
So are you still in New Mexico then?
No, I'm in California. I'm in San Diego.
Ah, gotcha. San Diego's great. College town.
Yeah. I'm away from all that, but yes.
So my wife and I lived in Southern California, like around South Bay, LA area. So we went to San Diego quite a bit.
Where are you now?
I'm in Vegas now.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, sunny Vegas.
Cool.
Well, the reason is, I already told you my wife's from Japan.
Right.
So we were living in Torrance, is this small town with a lot of Japanese stuff in it. Mm-hmm. So she was super happy there. She could get groceries and books and right.
Of course.
Right. But California is like really like, who am I telling? It's a very expensive place to live.
Can be. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to escape the California taxes, but be like a close commute to go back, as needed to buy books and groceries. Yes. So that's why Vegas, not like I live in the casinos or anything like that.
Sure.
We go every day, but we don't gamble that much. We just we're mall walkers in the casino.
Oh,
so that's what we do. We get our steps in the casino.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating. You should go climbing. You have such good climbing at your back door.
Yeah. Actually, when I walk outside in nice weather, I live on the side of a mountain. So I'm in zone 2 in about 30 steps.
That's so cool. Oh, wow.
I'm right on the edge of the desert. So if I feel like going and battling scorpions and stuff like that, I'm right there. So
that's so awesome.
Yes. I want to get a mountain bike, but I'm kind of lazy. So I might not do that. Okay. Okay. So you're growing up in New Mexico, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. You're bored. You got to get out of there. So what do you do after high school?
Well, I mean, I think there should be a backtrack. Do you want me to get into my past and like things that I experienced before?
Of course. Yes.
Because
whatever happens. Yeah. So we're using the chronology of your life this time as just a backstop to tell the story. So if there's more story in childhood, let's do it.
Yeah. I think it's important to know like where I was before high school and why I did what I did when I was in high school.
Of course. Let's do it.
So I grew up with a lot of illness in my family. For myself, I had pneumonia when I was 1 and 2, which led to a lot of other, traumatic experiences emotionally because of my family and then feeling like I was going to die.
Yikes.
And also a lot of other elements came. I had asthma my entire childhood and teens. And I was in and out of the hospitals. I lost the majority of my family before I turned 15, which my mom died 4 days after my 15th birthday. And I had hormonal disturbances, endometriosis. My father was an alcoholic. I had a lot of just traumatic things that actually, I became a rebel as a high schooler. So I was one of those kids where I barely made it through high school. If it wasn't for one of the principal's assistants, she was an angel and she helped me get through. I mean, she passed me in places where I should not have been passed, but she did because she really wanted to get me out of there.
Wow.
And so I experienced a lot of that. And then I turned that into a lot of tumultuous relationships because I wanted to continue the patterns of people leaving me and feeling abandoned. And so it took me until I was probably 18 years old. And to preface this, where I'm going, I was terrified of everything from my early near-death experiences as a child and watching all my family die. I was terrified of life. Like everything would freak me out. And I could have the simplest PTSD. I'd watch something on TV and the way my brain was wiring things because it was so programmed early on to fear a lot of different feelings and stuff. Everything I'd watched would turn into a fear. So I wouldn't fly. I wouldn't go to the beach. I wouldn't do all of these things. I wouldn't leave the town that I was in. I was terrified of moving forward. I just wanted to stay exactly where I was and have nothing ever change.
Hide out in the cave and just try to stay alive.
Right, exactly. Try to survive. That's what I was doing, just always trying to survive.
Right.
And one day something flipped inside and I was like, you know what? I want to get over these fears. And so the most terrifying things for me was flying, being near the ocean, and boats. And so I signed up to work on a cruise ship. And
I talk about immersion therapy.
I know. I literally took my first flight to go and work on a cruise ship in the middle of Hawaii.
Wow.
And so from there, everything just opened up. I was like, oh my God, I need to know more. I need to experience more. What is life, right?
Wow.
And all of a sudden, like all those fears went out the window. So I started stepping into every other fear that I had. If I had a fear, I was like, I want to face this. I want to get through this.
Damn.
And so that's where from high school, I just took a completely different direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Let's drill down into that because like losing like mom at like 15. So what were the circumstances around that?
So my mom had colon cancer and it was something that she did not realize until the last moment. So she like died 4 months later. Now, granted, had she not gone into the field that she went to, I don't think she would have died, but that's a whole nother story.
My goodness. Wow.
Yeah. And so, but the first big loss was my grandma when I was 8. She was my favorite person in my family. She was the one who I spent the most time with. And I like telling this story because it really shows how far a person can come. And when I was a baby and had pneumonia and I was in and out of the hospital, we receive feelings and emotions. We don't understand words at that point. We just understand like the vibrations around us and how the sounds that our parents.
You don't have language yet, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And so the way my parents were saying I love you when I was tied down in incubators came out in fear, right? So I attributed the word love to mean something really scary because they were terrified. So then they were saying I love you. It came out in this like really fearful way. And so from a very early age, I feared the word love and I would never say it. I had this every time someone in my family would say, I love you. I remember being 5 and I would just get anxious and my body would tighten and I would just like, don't say that to me. I would never say it back. Well, when I was 8, my grandma who had breast cancer, she was in the hospital and I stood up in my chair and I wrote her a little letter and I read it to her. And the last thing I said was, I love you. And it's the first time I ever said, I love you to anyone. And she literally died right after I said that. And so as an 8-year-old, the way that our brains operate, we're super narcissistic at that age. We think everything revolves around
you. Yes.
And yes, connected to us. And so I thought I killed her. And I took that sensation and I was like, I will never say this word again. I cannot, I was terrified.
Wow.
And so I never got to tell my mom that I loved her, even though she was already dying. And I still would not say I loved her because I thought it was going to kill her that much quicker.
Yikes.
So I grew up with that kind of like early on fear of love. And the next time I ended up saying it was when I was in my late 20s, when my grandpa was in the hospital. He's the only one who made it to live to be old. And he was in the hospital and I told him he was afraid he was going to die. And it was in that moment that I realized like, I want him to know that I love him, because if he dies and I do not say it, I'm going to regret that so much more. It was the first awareness that I had at the late 20s of understanding this trauma that I had experienced when I was little. And it took everything I had to tell him that I loved him. Like, it made me cry because it was so difficult for me to get those words out.
Yeah.
And so that's where that actually started healing, like a big chunk of like, oh, like, man, that actually really triggered me at such a young age. And we don't think about those instances, you know?
It's
And
almost
so,
like you were like, this is going to sound silly. I'm not trying to sound silly.
no, life is silly.
But it reminds me of like a superhero girl that like, you know, knows like if I touch somebody without this glove on, they're going to die. Right.
Like Elsa.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like you've got a superpower. When you say the word love, people die.
Right. That's what I thought. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. And then you know you have to.
Right.
Yikes. Oh my goodness. So did you got the words out and he didn't die? Did that help?
He did not.
Did that?
No,
help?
I faced my fear because I finally understood. I was able to comprehend at that point in my life that my grandma was so happy to hear those words from me.
Yeah.
That she was able to let go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that was one of the greatest gifts that I gave her.
Right.
But try telling an 8-year-old that, and that's not, and obviously I didn't even have the parents who were going to be able to, you know, put that. We didn't talk about death. We didn't talk about anything. It was the 80s, for crying out loud. Like, it was just like, get over it.
Yeah.
Shit happens.
Rub a little dirt on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes, been there, done that. Wow. Yeah. Okay, let's all take a deep breath. Wow, that's I know you lived it, but that's a lot.
That's that's a small piece.
That's still, that's a lot. Like, so how did your dad end up dying? Like, and when did that happen?
So my dad was 56 when he died.
Okay.
And my dad had a really rough life. Like, as much as I can like look back and see like a lot of the trauma that I experienced as a kid was because of him, I had so much compassion for my dad when he died. He went through everything. He lost his mom, his brothers, his wife, all of these people in his family. And he also had an accident when he was in his early 20s that really affected his back. And he had a lot of health issues to the point where he eventually lost his legs. His legs gave out on him.
Wow.
And he ended up having to have more back surgeries, and then he couldn't use his dominant arm, and it just kept cascading. And he just did not, I look back at that generation and they didn't have the tools that we do nowadays to understand trauma and to heal through certain things. Right. And they just didn't have that early on. So when I look at my dad, I'm like, he really did do the best that he could do with what he was given.
Right.
And so he ended up dying of pneumonia. Well, he had pneumonia. He got through it, but then his lungs something happened to his lungs. No one actually knows. But he just died one day.
Yeah. No, I've heard this before. This idea of when we cough, every time you cough, even if you've just got like a cold or a flu, and you cough, you're doing damage to your lungs a little bit, right? So if you go through like a severe sort of like, one doctor told me once when I was still living in LA that I was trying too hard when I coughed. And that was true. That was true. It was one of these things that my dad said was like, you got to get that shit out of there. Right. He's like, he's from that generation. Don't take a pill. That's your body trying to make you better. You got to lean into that, and to a point, he's right. I was just overachieving. Right. One thing that I tried to overachieve at was coughing this particular cold. Right. So he said, you need to try a little. It's good. You're right. You're on the right track. You need to cough. Just don't try so hard.
Right. Just allow it to naturally happen.
Right.
Don't exacerbate
exactly. Yeah. I was trying. I leaned in too hard. So then he said that I had damaged my lungs, and that damage is going to take some time to heal. And so that's why you're still coughing, right? Your infection's gone, but now your lungs are sort of like inflamed, I think is what he said. So he gave me one of these inhalers that asthmatics use, but I only had to use it like a week or something. But
it's silly because that damages your lungs like tenfold. Like it's comical to me that they're like, oh, you damaged your lungs by coughing, but let's give you this steroid that's actually going to affect it even more.
Well, whatever. It worked. So I'll take it.
So funny.
So next time, what should I do instead? not that.
Take NAC.
Say that again.
I said take NAC.
NAC. What's NAC?
Acetylcholine. It's a natural amino acid that actually naturally coats your lungs and helps force things out that shouldn't be in there, but also soothes it.
Oh, wow.
It's one of the best things on the market. The FDA actually pulled it from the market during COVID because it was helping so many people that they wanted to see if they could make money off of it. But because of amino acid, they couldn't. So then it eventually got put back on the market.
Don't get me started.
Oh.
But I am going to write down. So I can just go buy NAC on Amazon or something, huh?
Oh yeah. It's a great product to have in your cabinet.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get a list of home remedies from Linn Rivers.
Take my course and you definitely will.
That's great. All right. So dad, alcoholic. Do you want to get into that at all?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I mean, my childhood memories, I don't actually remember anything positive, like the positive sensations that I might have experienced. I don't remember those. Like, I know I had birthday parties, but I can't remember them because the dominant feeling that I had as a childhood was anxiety, either surrounding my mom and dad's relationship, anxiety surrounding seeing my grandma sick and fall when I couldn't help her, my illness that I was going through, asthma, all these things. And with my dad, the most prominent memories are driving home with him and my mom after parties, and he's drunk and all over the road.
Oh, God.
And my mom is just holding me in fear and trying to calm him down while he's flashing people on the road, like trying to get them off the, like coming up to them and honking. And
yeesh.
And those are my dominant memories as a child.
Wow.
And I just look back and I'm like, man, like.
So yeah, and it's weird because as you're saying it now, we're all kind of like scared, right? I'm like, oh my God, she grew up in a horror movie. You grew up in a horror movie.
I mean, it's a different kind of horror movie, right? And it's like, I grew up in it was like a rundown trailer. Like it was not pretty.
Right.
Now, going to my grandma's was a different story, which is why I loved being with her. It was a different space. Even though she was sick, I still felt more taken care of.
Wow.
Right.
And she had a real house. It was kept.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I felt loved, right? My dad loved me to the best of his abilities. I mean, I was daddy's little girl.
Sure.
But the reality is that he was neglecting me. He smoked in the house knowing I had asthma and pneumonia and all these things.
Wow.
And yes, sure, it was the 80s, but we knew the damage that these things were causing.
Right.
And so, there was a lot of things that my dad did that caused a lot of trauma. But I still look at it now from the space of, man, he did not have the help he needed. Like, I feel bad for
right.
He was.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sympathetic. Yes. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, all right. So let's talk about like moving forward from there. I don't know where you want to start, but what was the road to recovery like? I mean, I got it that you started like facing fears, but like, what was your health journey like? I mean, at what point did you start getting healthy? And let's talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually started holistic nutrition when I was 18 years old. I started going to school for it.
Wow.
Because I started asking bigger questions. Like after my mom died, it was very much like, why are all these people in my family dying from cancer or heart disease or diabetes or of the like? Right. As I just knew that there had to be something to it.
Right.
And so I started doing research when I was 18, but the major turning point was right before then when I kept going to the doctors time and time again. We're talking Western medical system here.
Yeah.
And they kept putting me on antibiotics. They kept putting me on prescription drugs. And I was suicidal. So they had me on all of these, antidepressants and stuff. And one day I went to the doctor and it was like a download. It was definitely a download that happened where she handed me antibiotics for something that just kept coming back time and time again. And something said, check out this internet thing. And the internet had just taken hold and we had dial up. I'm sure you remember the AOL. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna check on this and type in what I'm experiencing and seeing what pops up. And sure enough, this natural remedy popped up for what I was experiencing. And I was like, I'm gonna try it. What do I have to lose? This hasn't been working. I tried it once. It was gone in 2 days and it never came back. And that for me was this big aha moment of there's something to this. And so very soon after, I figured out the asthma piece and I got rid of a lifelong, really chronic condition with asthma and no longer have asthma.
Wow.
Right. And that's something they told me time and time again. You're just going to have to learn to deal with this. You're going to have to take this for the rest of your life, blah, blah, blah. And I got rid of it and I was playing soccer without having to use an inhaler. And I was like, there's so much to this that we're not getting. We're not being shown what's actually happening. And so it progressed. And so I went into holistic nutrition and then I went into massage therapy, Reiki, spiritual counseling. Really learning just about everything that it means to be human, right? Like what is the human body and what do we need to do in order to be healthy and happy? And I had endometriosis and all these hormonal imbalances, which also caused a lot of digestive issues and chemical imbalances. And I still had depression and like aggressive outbursts really often throughout most of my teens and 20s. And so I was like, I need to figure this out. I need to know why this is happening. It's not just a psychotic thing. There's a reason.
Right. And actually, like, what were the doctors telling you? What was the medical opinion? Well,
at this point I was out.
You're done. You're done. Okay.
I was done. I was like,
wow.
They were keeping me sick and I watched them keep my entire family sick.
Understood.
So I was like, I am not doing that. So I finally started tapping into naturopathic doctors who had the ability to order lab work. They had the ability to diagnose.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. But they weren't going to give me any medications because I said, no, I'm not interested in that. They're like, great, find out what you can do about this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I ended up diving into functional medicine and adding that into my holistic practice. And that is where the game changed. Because functional medicine is all about finding the root cause of why we're sick.
Yeah. Right.
And when you go to the hospital and they diagnose you, when you're diagnosed with something, those are symptoms. They're not diseases. They're symptoms of an underlying imbalance in your body.
Right.
And I would have been diagnosed with so many different conditions had I gone in, like fibromyalgia and all these pains and, chronic fatigue syndrome and all these things. But because I knew better and I was studying a completely different approach, I was able to find what was causing my illness and I was able to take the steps to getting better. And I want to clarify that there was a point about 6 years ago. I'm looking at time and I'm 6 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
Where I was so sick that I tried throwing a Frisbee and I almost had a heart attack. My body was just like shutting down.
Wow.
Because my appendix had ruptured and I ended up in the hospital. This was the last near-death experience that I had. I ended up in the hospital and I was on antibiotics, straight antibiotics for a week because I had peritonitis. Is there a point for antibiotics? Absolutely. Right?
Yeah.
But there's different practices that you need to incorporate with antibiotics, which the medical system's not doing.
Right.
And so it wrecked my gut microbiome so much that I couldn't digest anything anymore. And it was seeping into my bloodstream. And I was just so sick. I had patches all over my skin. My face was bright red all the time. It was just awful. And I was having these extreme heart palpitations. And one day I was like, I want to throw a Frisbee. And I tried, and I had to sit for 15 minutes to bring my body back into like an okay place.
Oh, wow.
And so I got really sick. And so it was my mission. I'm like, I'm not going to live this way. Like if I'm still doing this 5 years from now, there's no freaking way I will take myself out, like happily. And so I was like, I need to figure out why this is happening. And I did. And I got over every single thing that I had been experiencing that unfortunately so many people are experiencing now.
Yeah.
Right. Their normal health is like, oh, well, I'm okay. Like I can get up and, sure, I ache and stuff, but that's not normal. We're not meant to feel that kind of
Right.
pain element on a regular basis.
That chronic inflammation thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
You said a lot.
Yeah.
Like every little sentence is a lot. So, okay, like I was depressed. So let's talk a little bit about like, did you ever do a suicide attempt? Just trying to pull at some strings here a little bit.
Well, so let's talk about this from a completely different perspective.
Sure.
Suicide.
Yeah. I call that dying from depression. That's what
Right.
Yeah. Because I tried to do that too.
The reality is so through one of my near-death experiences, one of the things that I was shown is suicide is not just you pulling the trigger or, cutting yourself. It's also not taking care of your body. It's also knowing that you're sick and continuing to do the things that that are making it worse, right? That is suicide. You have the tools to get better.
It's like a chronic version of suicide.
Correct.
Right.
And so when I saw that, I was just like, oh. And so the last time that I came back, I knew, I was like, I have to put both feet on the floor and be here and do right for myself. There's no other way. Otherwise, if I come out of this life, I'm going to have to come back in the same way.
So that was sort of like your wake up call to own it, basically own the responsibility.
Yes.
It's like, God gave me this body. It's amazing. And he charged me to care for it.
In different words, sure.
Yeah.
That's not what I experienced, but yes, and it was the first near-death experience I had was when my partner was actually dying at the same time.
Wow.
And
what? Whoa. Yes.
Yeah. And so I had like a really big, she ended up dying. I obviously ended up getting better, but it was in that moment that first near-death experience and what I was shown, I knew that I had to take care of myself, but I still didn't quite know how. Like I didn't understand the steps. It wasn't as pivotal as the next one where it's like I came back and I was like, oh, I have to take care of myself. There's no reason to be here if I'm not going to actually be healthy and share what I came to share. And so it was just really profound. Both of them were profound and got me to that aha moment. But the second one, I came back with the knowledge of how to do it. I was like, wow. This is,
Yeah.
So,
when I was just after I retired from the Air Force, so that was like I retired in 2008, right? I know.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I retired when I was 38 years old. Isn't that cool?
Oh my God.
Well, that's one thing. Well, if you think about it, you sign up for the Air Force and you're 18 and 20 years later, you're 38 and they go, okay, have a nice life. Here's your check. Wow. It was really cool. But okay. So like my way of partying then was like, let's have cheeseburgers, fries, and more beer. Right. That was so like way overweight. Right. Wow. Not really, I think being active duty Air Force was sort of like keeping me like kind of healthy because I couldn't be as fat. I couldn't be as fat as I wanted to be. I had to exercise enough to pass the test. Right. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I retired, that community support was gone. Right. Yeah. I could be as fat as I wanted to be. And I did. If you went back and found my driver's license photo from like 2009, oh my God, I don't remember what I weighed, but it was a lot. It was like close to 250. I think I'm running.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So just imagine what my wake up call was a lot less traumatic than everything in your life. So sorry about that. But I went to this thing. It was like a workshop event in Portland, right? And so I did not rent a car because Portland is very walkable. So I got a hotel that was walking distance from everything. And then they've got trains. And I was like, I can walk. I walk all the time. And I couldn't walk.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So that was sort of like this.
Oof.
Why can't I, I would just like try to walk and I would get like a little ways and my ankles are swelling and just everything hurts. Right. And I'm like, this is not normal. Right. So, that reminded me of like, even like things. I would go and for a while I brewed beer with friends, and brewing beer takes a while, right? You're committing to like hanging out for 3 hours. And my buddies would be standing up for those 3 hours.
Oh man.
And I'd be like, I can't stand for 3 hours. That's just not going to happen. Right. So, so for me, that was sort of like the wake up call of this is not like I'm not a healthy person. I need to figure this out. Yeah.
Good for you for it being that small, because most people aren't able to see it that soon, which is why we have the epidemic that we do.
Right.
You know,
right.
50% of Americans at this point are either pre-diabetic or are diabetic.
Right.
And it's because they're not aware of that when they get to that space. They wait until last minute, right? Until something drastic happens. So I think it's amazing if people could do what
lucky.
you did.
Yeah, I got lucky.
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's great.
When I think about all the ways that I got lucky, it's just amazing.
I just hope people are hearing you say that and it kind of clicks something in them, right?
Yeah.
Because
right.
You should not have difficulty.
If you're like 38 or 39 and you can't like stand for 3 hours or all day, you should be able to stand all day.
Exactly.
And maybe take a break, maybe every 10 minutes because I'm a little sore. I'm going to sit down for 10 minutes and then I'm going to put my desk back up and stand up some more. Right. If you can't do that, you need to think about changing your diet a little. Yeah. For me,
something's off.
Yeah. I started with a juice reboot. Have you ever heard of those?
No.
So there was this movie about a guy a lot like me. It was called like Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead or something like that.
The documentary.
Yeah. It was this rich guy from Australia. And he said, for 30 days, I'm going to drink nothing but juiced vegetables and fruit. And so I was like, okay, well, yeah, I'll try anything. So, 30 days later, I felt way better. Now, juicing, not necessarily my favorite thing, right? I learned that later. Right. You're throwing away the best part.
Yeah. I could go on a tangent about juices and fruit juices.
Right. I get it now. So now I'm on the micronutrient smoothie kick. So way better.
Yeah. Seriously, the blood glucose, how your blood glucose goes up from juicing is ridiculous. The only reason you feel better is because you're giving your digestive system chance to actually like push all the stuff out.
Right.
But what it's doing to your blood system, forget it.
Yeah.
That stuff is straight up toxic.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. Right. Yeah.
It is.
There's some juicers out there that let you catch the the fiber. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's so if you stir that in and maybe, I don't know how you eat it. Just use a blender.
Even then, it's like because it separates so quickly
that
the juice is going to reach quicker and seep in fast. So that's why fruit had its perfect mechanism of your eating, and you have to chew it together. So you're getting the fiber right away.
Right. We're taking something that nature made perfectly and ruining it.
Don't pull the juice from it. That's straight sugar going to your blood, people. If you could see what it's actually doing, like from actually getting to see the process, it's not pretty.
It's like cocoa leaves and cocaine, right? Cocoa leaves are awesome. Cocaine, horrible.
Totally.
Anyway, so let's move on and talk a little bit more about like, geez, your journey is crazy. All right, so
it's fun.
Sexuality, growing up. So for a while, you said you were homeless. My goodness, crazy.
Yeah, so it was right after my partner had been diagnosed with the same kind of colon cancer that my mom died from, actually, which was interesting, right? So that was actually, to sidestep really quick, that was actually the moment that I realized that I was creating my own reality. And I was literally attracting in the same situations and reliving those because I had not like moved past that, right? Yeah. That was the moment where I was like, oh my God, I'm literally creating my own reality and drawing in all the things that I've been.
Right.
And so that was a big moment. But after that, I was still healing my body. I was still pretty sick and I couldn't work consistently. And I ended up, long story short with this one, moving into a space where there were several people and I had my own room. I was like, I'm going to try the roommate thing. Not a roommate person. So that was like really difficult, but I was like, well, maybe it'll help me out. And I'm very intuitive. I've been psychic since I was a child. And I think it has to do with my first 2 near-death experiences. But I was like, oh my God, these people are about to go through something. And the way this housing situation is going to end is not good. I'm going to get out now.
Wow.
And so I moved out, not having another house. And I was in San Diego at this time, but a different time. And sure enough, that next month, there was a whole thing that happened with the landlord. And a whole bunch of stuff happened.
Whole bunch of drama.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And so I was happy that I got out, but I could not find another space to live. And so then I had a friend and she's like, well, there's an office space in the co-working center next door. She's like, if I give you the keys, you could just go and sleep in there. And I was like, that's a great temporary solution. I was like, I'll use it maybe a week at most, thinking I was going to find another space. I could not find another space and I ended up in there for 6 months.
Wow.
And I wasn't able to work. Everything just kind of like fell apart during that time. And I remember laying there on the floor. My dogs were sleeping in the car. And I didn't know how I was going to eat the next day. I was like, how the heck am I going to make money to eat tomorrow? And that was a point for me where all of the trauma that I had experienced that was culminating up to me being in this space again really solidified. And I was like, oh my God, like I can't get any lower right now. I don't even know if I'm going to eat food tomorrow. And I'm sleeping on the floor of an office space and hoping someone doesn't come in.
Wow.
And in that space, I was able to drop into a sense of trust that I had never experienced before. I was just like, well, I'll figure it out. And no longer was I overrun by this adrenaline that I had been going on of like, oh, I need to figure this out. I need to figure this out. I was just like, you know what? I'll deal with it tomorrow. Let me try to get some sleep. And it was the first time that I had ever gotten to that space.
Yeah. You got to
and
that.
Sure enough. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The next day I woke up and I had a couple of jobs that got me, like $50. And I was like, great, I can go buy food. And then it just kind of happened. And it was honestly one of the most beautiful moments for me because I was no longer playing a victim. Like, because before I kept saying, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? And thanks to my partner who was diagnosed with cancer, that instance woke me up to my creating my own reality. And so in that moment on the floor, I was like, oh, this is my creation. This is what I am putting myself into. And I was able to just like move forward from that point, and start seeing more of what I was creating and what relationships was I drawing in, what kind of friendships. And it was in that moment actually that I met one of my absolute best friends. She's still my best friend to this day. And I had that because I woke up to realizing, like, what do I want in my life? And sure enough, here comes this amazing woman who just befriended me in a way that I had never been befriended before. And yeah.
So what was your conversation like in your head? Like when you're lying there going, how am I going to eat tomorrow? And knowing that I'm making all this happen to me. Like I'm interested in that conversation in your head.
Right. Well, it was just that it's exactly what I was wondering. I'm laying there and I'm thinking, like, what am I going to eat tomorrow? Like, am I going to have to borrow money? Do I need to find someone who can lend me money? And I was just like processing like how that was going to happen. But really, that's the first time that I went silent because my PTSD brain was constantly on why is all this happening? What's going to happen next? Waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like I was just constantly always like in fight or flight. Right. And this was the first time that I lost that sensation in my body of like fear. Like all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, this is low. And
you don't get much lower. Right.
Right. And so it was just kind of like this, there was less thought there than there had been the majority of my life. And trust. It just came down to trust that if I opened up, something would come in.
Interesting. Wow. Because I've been in those like really, really dark spaces where like I just had another guest on yesterday, and we were both talking about what that sort of like, I want to kill myself. This pain that I'm feeling is not going away. And this is when I had a house and a job, right? It was just like that. So sad. So whatever, right? That depression feels like. It's like, it reminded me of recently I saw this movie or TV show. This Japanese woman just had a miscarriage, and she's just lying in her hospital bed, and she's just like, I don't know how to make this pain stop. Right. Mm-hmm. It just hurts so much. So I remember that pain. When we were sharing, like, we were like, I remember that feeling. Like, yeah, I don't know how to make this pain stop. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I forgot was I just started asking myself, well, am I okay now? Right. And, you know, I'm not cold. I have money. I just had a bunch of food, more than I needed. Right. So I'm kind of okay. Yeah. Even though I have this pain. So maybe I can be okay with this pain. Was there can you relate to that at all?
You know, I think I want to take this in a different direction.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I have been called on the podcast a lot for lately is understanding the connection between our microbiome and how it affects the way we process trauma. Okay. Right. Because I had understood the trauma that I had gone through. I had unpacked it. I forgave my dad. I really understood his situation. I was like, fine with it. I was like, okay, this stuff happened. Move on. Like, I understood it. Yep. Right. But I kept having the depressive episodes, and I kept having these aggressive outbursts, and, you know, like not wanting to be here. I mean, that was my regular feeling of not wanting to be here. And when I got my body in check and I understood what was happening, you know, in my gut and how it was affecting my mind, the trauma disappeared, right? Because when we look at trauma, it is an event that happened. The thing that is expressing the emotion is our body. Right. So there's a chemical imbalance happening. And when we can fix that chemical imbalance, our neurons can actually function properly and create new networks. Right. When it's not, and when you have certain bacteria that are literally feeding your nerve, we have millions of nerves coming from our gut to our brain.
Yeah, it's like another brain. It's another brain.
It is.
It's another brain.
And when you really look at it, it's the first thing that was fed. Our brain was built off of eating meat. Right. In eating that our brain was formed. So what is actually the first brain, right?
Sure.
And so
when you put it like that, it's a whole new, I've thought about that. I've never made that kind of connection. That story that I just told you about how, you know, I felt really sick. So I decided to try to clean up my diet. Right. And I knew that was like a life-changing thing, but I never put those two things together. Right. Just like that. That's why I was able to get better. Right. Not just physically better. Right. But like emotionally better. Yes. Right. Because it's almost like there's this energy block thing or something. I don't know how to say it, but
it's not even an energetic block. It's the fact that our digestion system is literally creating.
It's brain number one. It's brain number one.
It's turning on neurons and it's turning off others.
Right.
And when we can't function properly, it's just going to continue firing the same things that we know instead of actually turning off our vagus nerve from that fight or flight response and being able to sit in a calm space and I remember for the first time when I stopped eating a certain food, and it was a plant chemicals called salicylates that are directly linked to autism, depression, suicide, and a lot of other symptoms. It's one of the chemicals that is found in the majority of plants. And when you have any dysbiosis, it causes neurological problems. It's a neurotoxin. Wow. And so when I removed those from my body, I stopped having the aggressive outbursts that I've had my entire life. And I was just like, this is how I'm supposed to feel. Like, I'm supposed to be this calm,
Right,
this
right.
happy.
Yeah, you're shocked.
And I was just like,
people not watching the video are seeing like not seeing the face of,
Right.
I know exactly what you
Shock.
mean though. Yes, it's shock.
Yeah.
The shock face. Yes.
yes,
I've
and
had
we
so
don't
many
know
of
about
those.
this.
Right. I've
We're
had
not
so
taught, we're not taught this stuff, and how plants can be really harmful to humans if you're not aware of what they're contributing to and how they're affecting your gut. Like, there's so much to it. And I think so many more people would be more calm off of antidepressants. They would be more apt to create beautiful things in their lives if they understood that if your body's not in balance, your emotional health is going to waver just as much.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
I looked healthy. I was pre-diabetic, but I looked healthy.
Right.
And I was having all of these things.
Yeah.
But got that in check, and I was like, holy crap, man, I did not know I could feel this good. Like, I did not know that that was my normal.
Right. Crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Over 30 years of it.
and you, and it sounds like you were like, again, the thing that struck me was like in your head, right? Intellectually, with thoughts, you were okay with all that stuff.
Right.
And it didn't matter.
Correct.
You hadn't done and a lot of people are like moving off of this thing about like a lot of mental health, the beginnings of mental health. We're all about the content. Let's talk about the story of your trauma and get good with that. Right. That helps. I think it's but I don't think it's not primary though. No. It's
not. Humans deal with shit. They do. They deal with stuff.
That's
in their
kind of why we're here, right?
Exactly.
Is to deal with shit. Yes.
And when you have a body that can actually function, it handles that stuff so well.
Right. So the Buddhists listening, like a better diet and like taking care of your health can like stop a lot of those secondary arrows. Tertiary, totally. All the other arrows are coming from somewhere else in your body. And that probably has something to do with nutrition. Okay. So, wow, we've really done a lot. Can you keep going or should we wrap up?
Yeah, I can keep going.
Okay. So, let's see. Maybe another 10 minutes. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So yeah, I just looked at the clock. I was like, oh shit, we're supposed to end now. We're having too much fun. So, all right. So let's see here. Let's talk a little bit more about addiction. So what were you addicted to?
Drama.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, addiction shows up in different ways, right?
Totally.
And again, it comes down to a chemical imbalance.
Right.
And it's a form of a PTSD. And so for myself, I needed the things that made me feel awful. I needed the kick of feeling abandoned. I needed the kick
worst
of
addiction ever.
Right. It's
like, nobody would want that
not, one. No, like it was intentional to draw myself into situations that were going to cause some kind of, disharmony, dis-ease, loss. I intentionally got into relationships that I did not want to be in. So then 2 years from then, I could have that sense of loss and feel that abandonment. And so it's a literal dopamine kick. I would smile when I would get that. And then I'd go into my little panic attack of like, oh my God, they're leaving me. Right. Because I was getting what I wanted.
Yikes.
But then I was also relieving. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I thought I knew like some of the worst, like tobacco, right? Tobacco is just really stupid addiction. For me, anyway.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, so I never smoked much. I never was addicted to cigarettes or anything like that. But smokeless tobacco, this is a thing that country bumpkins in Michigan do.
Oh, yeah.
Super addictive, always horrible. Like the last time I quit,
right.
I actually quit, I was like, I don't want to, it wasn't so much that I didn't want to chew anymore because I did.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So that's one of those addictions that it's like most of my addictions were the things that you like. It's moving towards the thing I like. It's horrible. Shouldn't be doing it, like it's booze or, porn or sex or, something that is like a pleasure thing. Right.
Right.
But like tobacco, not that fun, really. And getting off of it is just so horrible. Oh my God. The only reason
people are still smoking, like actually smoking these days, I just can't understand. Like the fact that it's even still legal. Like I feel like that's the one thing that we should be like, no, you want to kill yourself, fine, go hotbox yourself in the car.
Yeah.
But don't affect other people around you.
Right.
It's so toxic.
I've heard a whole nother thing about tobacco. And I know this is not a popular thing. Like tobacco in and of itself, not horrible. Tobacco every damn day, all day, right? Just like cigarette after cigarette after cigarette after cigarette. That's the bad thing. If you were to go to a hookah bar like a couple times a month, no big deal, right?
There's also the other side of it, though, that there's additives and all of this.
That's true.
Right. Tobacco, the plant, was actually medicinal and used hormonally.
Yeah. Right. So if you do that part, it's not so bad. Yeah.
But then humans like to take everything and make
turn it into cocaine.
And
so they can make money.
Right.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy humans.
At least start vaping, people. Like, come on.
I've never vaped, but I heard that was bad for you too.
Well, it is, but it's at least not damaging other people around you to the extent that.
Ah, right. Yes.
Like I said, if people want to do that to their own body, fine. Like I'm not going to.
Yeah, don't judge, right? Because I'm bad. I've done just about every bad thing you could do to my body too, right? So,
right.
You can stop though. I'll give you permission, everyone, to stop. You all have
time. You're done smoking. You're never going to smoke again.
You can quit. It's better on the other side. That's what I would say with tobacco. But I think the story that I was trying to get to was the only reason I think I was able to quit at all was when I was stationed in Japan. The convenience stores that sold tobacco products, like, they closed at 11 p.m.
Oh.
So if I could just, grunt through not buying tobacco until 11 p.m., I knew I couldn't buy it until the next day. So when I wake up, I'm a little bit better. When I'm trying to go to sleep, it seemed really difficult to not want to get out of bed and go buy tobacco. So I would just wait till the weekend. And I'm using this weekend to quit tobacco. All I have to do is gut through 3 nights in a row and I can do it. And yeah. And I did it. So anyway, don't do it again. Yeah, don't do it again.
Good.
Let's talk a little bit about the microbiome, because I kind of understand what you're talking about, but I don't think most people do. So let's just give us an overview of microbiome, because I know there's one on your skin, there's one on your gut. What is your microbiome and why is it so important?
The better question to ask is, how many cells do the microbiome carry that are human?
Right. So we are actually more microbiome than human.
Yes.
Right.
We're only about 10% human cells. The rest of us is microbiome.
That's awesome.
And microbiome is our entire being, right? I mean, we're surrounded by microbes everywhere.
Right.
And but it's all in our body, but over 100 trillion of those microbes live in the gut. And they are what basically assimilate everything that we ingest, right? And so when you have dysbiosis, which means you have your gut microbiome is not in a good order. So you either have bacteria, fungi, or viruses that are out of balance, right? Because usually when they're in balance, they are all beneficial for us.
Right.
When they get out of order, and let's say you have certain dysbiosis with bacteria, that can cause SIBO, which is small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, where our small intestine does not house almost any microbes. They reside all in the large intestine predominantly. However, through antibiotic use and slowing down our migrating motor complex and all of these different actions, they seep into the small intestine, and that's where we start having a lot of issues.
Yikes.
Okay, so with our microbiome, again, it's really taking care of everything that we put into our body. You're feeding trillions of babies, and it's a symbiotic relationship. So if they're fed well and taken care of, they're going to take care of you. They are literally linked to over 85% of disease that happens in humans. And so that's where we want to start asking the bigger question of, we're not eating to feed ourselves, we're eating to feed these microbes. And the reality is, when you take our human soul out of the picture, our bodies are an organism. They're a meat suit that is literally feeding, right? It's just like an animal walking. Like, the way they move is because of what they're assimilating and everything that they're going through. It's no different. Right? Our body has its own composition, and it needs to be taken care of in order for the microbes to do its job. And our gut is basically one hollow tube, right? But it sends everything, it sends signals to where it needs to go. And we have the gut brain axis. So that's how we get the nerve cells up to the brain. All of this is happening. But the thing that's happening in our society more often than not lately is when we damage our gut lining, whether it's through medication, antibiotics, poor diet, not moving enough, all of these different, insulin resistance is the top one. When we're not doing everything we can to take care of that, it creates a leaky gut, which means that food particles and toxins can seep in to your bloodstream.
Yikes.
And that's why our immune system comes in. It's like, hey, this shouldn't be here. And that's why we have so many autoimmune disorders. So our microbiome is literally the most important part of our being that we should be taking care of.
Right. Wow. So I'm kind of familiar with the gut biome. Do you work with the skin biome at all? Should I be not like using soap ever?
So the biome in general is sensitive.
Yeah. Because I went through this whole skin disorder thing. That's why I'm asking. So when I went to see a really good dermatologist, he was like, you need to get good soap and make it super watery. Right. So I was like, okay, there's something going on here.
Well, here's the biggest picture of this is your skin is the biggest indicator of something being off in your body. Our skin is the largest organ.
Yes.
It is the first. If there is something going on and it's affecting your skin, that's saying, hey, there's something off in your body. Acne, 99% of acne is caused by an imbalance in your body, something that you're eating that is causing the reaction. The only time it's going to be go to see a dermatologist, which you don't even need to see then, because is if you are wearing makeup, if you're putting chemicals on your body and you're breaking out because of that, that's obvious. Right. Like don't put crappy stuff on your skin. But otherwise, your skin is one of the biggest indicators that something's off in your body. For myself, I was getting eczema when I was eating these certain particles that I was not aware of, that I had sensitivities to. When I stopped, all of it cleared up. And I would be able to tell based off of what my face was doing if I was actually getting the stuff in control. The second I try to go back off of it, thinking like, oh, maybe I healed it enough, sure enough, it would come back. So it was kind of like my first big tool of like, hey, nope, you're still not healed. Still need to work through this more. But as far as like the soaps and stuff that you use, it's still going to affect the rest of your body because it's the largest organ. You're absorbing everything that you put on your skin. And for the people who are like, no, I don't believe that stuff. It's just, that's how doctors still give babies medicine to this day, is by putting it on the bottom of their foot. Like babies who take antibiotics. You put it on the bottom of their foot, people. Like, it's not this woo-woo thing. Your skin absorbs everything that you put in.
Wow. That's crazy. I went through like 12 years of, it started when I went to massage school. So now that you're saying this, right, I started to get this weird, kind of like eczema. They call it atopic dermatitis. It has a name now, but that's probably what it was, because that was the first time in my life that I'm like putting this lotion, oil,
with a bunch of chemicals,
and I'm getting touched by different people every day. Oh, lovely. Thanks, massage school. So that was 12 years of what the hell's going on, right, for me. And then finally, right before lockdown in 2020, I went to see a dermatologist, and he was like, oh yeah, this is easy, right? And he gave me this sheet. So, okay, You can poo-poo the sheet if you want to, but it worked. It was
I'm curious what he told you.
Yeah. So it was basically like, stop irritating your skin.
Yes.
Right. So don't use a loofah. Don't use scalding hot water. Get super, super gentle soap. So I ended up with like Castile soap. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, Castile. Yeah.
Yeah. But he said like squirt like 5 of the full strength into a bottle and then fill up the rest of the bottle.
Dilute it.
Yes, it's super diluted. Right.
Yep.
So basically you're kind of like just getting a little bit of soap. and
Totally.
And only wash the things that might stink. You
Right.
know? Right.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Don't loofah.
That's perfect.
Right. See? That's what I said. And then if you
That's actually a really good that is like an advanced dermatologist.
I concur. Because for the other 12 years, they were like, oh, it's probably fungus. Here's an antifungal. Oh, you probably just need lotion. Or, oh, you probably need this steroid cream. But don't use it too much. Because, so now I have scarring on my ankles from steroid cream. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a great doctor who can go that distance. I mean, I use literally the old lard bars. Like it's literally,
yeah. That's awesome. The old lard bar. Lard. Yeah. Lard. Yeah. I want that.
Grandma's soap. It's literally just.
Can you buy that on like Amazon?
Amazon. Mm-hmm.
Grandma's soap?
Yeah.
I'm getting that.
Grandma's lye bars, I think is what they're.
Lye bar? L-Y-E?
Yeah.
Lye bar.
Yeah.
Okay. I love it.
Yeah, it's literally the cleanest, the most gentle soap you will ever find. Okay. 0 added chemicals, no plant compounds.
It's like lard and lye.
Yeah. The way they used to make soap.
I love it.
Yeah.
I could talk to you forever because this is fun, but we should probably wrap up.
All right, it's been a while.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We went long.
No, don't be.
So
it's great.
So how can folks best get in touch with Linn Rivers and learn about this $50 deal that you got going on?
So going to my website, www.linnrivers.com. And that is linnrivers.com. And I have a big button on there because I kept getting emails. How can I sign up for the course? Big button that says pre-launch course here, and it'll take you to the page.
Linn, you're amazing. I'm sorry you had to go through all that trauma.
Oh, don't be. I signed up for it.
Apparently we signed up for this shit. Crazy as that sounds.
You evolve. You have to go through certain things, and then you evolve to take control of your life. So
yes, and it's our job
to for myself.
Like I said, that's the purpose of this show, to talk about all of our capital T's and little T's, and let everybody know that we all went through it and came out the other side, and we're still smiling, and we're grateful, and we're happy.
100%.
Thank you so much, Linn.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Talk to you later.
You too. Bye.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.